Hello, and welcome to Learn Linux Now. My name is Edward. In this session, we're going to talk about the different Linux versions available to you. Because this is a kind of a large topic, I decided to break it up into two different parts. So this is part one of two. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, I encourage you to go back and watch my introduction video on why I'm producing these sessions. And as you can see here, I have the desktop distros list and a server distros list. And I briefly touched on this in my previous session discussion on what is Linux. And as you can see here, the desktop distros, these are some of the, I would consider the more popular distro choices. And that's one thing I want to mention is that is the wonderful thing about Linux is you have choice. You have plenty of choices to choose from. And if you go on the website, I believe it's called Distro Watch, it'll list out all the many different desktop distros, and I believe they even may have server distros listed. But that again is the wonderful thing about Linux is that you have choice. You don't have to just stick with one distro. And that's, believe it or not, there's a lot of people who do that, what's called distro hopping. They'll pick one distro, try it out for a month, a year, just to see how well they like it, and then they'll try another distro. I don't normally do that myself. I tend to stick with one distro for a long period of time, and actually currently using Fedora version 35 right now is out, and actually 36 is about to come out this week as I record this. But I usually just stick with Fedora. I have that on my desktop for my daily use, and I have it also on my laptops that I use for my family house who uses Fedora. So we're a Fedora home. I've used Ubuntu-based distros in the past, and I do like them. They're good distributions, but for me, I tend to stick with what I commonly refer to as an RPM-based distribution. And then you have your server distros. It's basically dedicated to servicing services like a web server or a Linux server. I'm sorry, a file server or even a SQL server. And as you can see, there's a pretty long list of some of the more common and popular server distros. And again, there's a long list. There's more server distros out there available. And as an example of what a desktop distro may look like, if you've never seen one before, I decided to throw up a virtual machine of a couple of desktop distros. And this one is the KDE desktop environment version of Fedora. And I'll go over what a desktop environment is in later videos. But as you can see here, as I log in, you're presented with your desktop, with the KDE desktop environment. And then you can see the task manager down here is actually, if you use Windows, it's very similar to what Windows may look like. You hit the start menu and you are presented with all your applications. And there are other icons here at the bottom as default. The system tray, the software center, file manager, and the web browser. And on the right bottom, what's considered I guess you could kind of consider the system tray, or some notifications and your control panel for your sound and such. But this is a common view of what the KDE desktop environment would look like. And then we have Pop! OS. Let me bring that up here real quick. And Pop! OS actually has their own desktop environment. It's based off of what's called the GNOME desktop environment. And forgive me, but I actually forget what the desktop environment is called, what Pop! OS, or System 76, I should say, the makers of the Linux-based desktop and laptops. I'm not a sponsor, but System 76, if you're listening, hit me up. But this is the Pop! OS made by System 76. And you're presented with your tray at the bottom. It's a little bit different view. Of course, you can pop this little button here for all your applications. You have your web browser, your file manager, and your terminal emulator. And we'll discuss that later, what terminal emulator is. And they have their Pop Shop where you can install, all your applications, and even do updates when they're available. And then, of course, your system settings here. And they have a taskbar at the very bottom, at the top too. And I believe you can actually change this and remove this top. I don't remember if you can do that or not, but that's a wonderful thing too about most desktop environments, is that you can customize it to your liking. With the GNOME desktop environment, I don't believe there's a lot of customization that you can do there, but you can configure and customize it the way you would like it. But more commonly, the KDE desktop environment gives you more choices in on your customized view. And then I'm going to bring up a server, a virtual machine here, a separate separate window here. And I've already logged into but this is running what's called Headless. In other words, there is no desktop environment installed. You are presented with a console. I'm going to exit out of here and show you what it looks like when you log in. So log in, put in your password, and you're presented with what's called the bash prompt. And we'll go over that a little bit later videos too, but for the most part, you're running the server all from command line to start and stop services, to do configurations and other other things that you can do from a command line. And again, we'll go over that in later videos. But that is a server, and this choice I've used and installed Alma Linux, and that's what I choose for all my server distributions, is Alma Linux, and it's based off of this is a derivative of Red Hat Linux. So that is a server distro. And again, I'm going to cover more of these topics later on in other videos, as far as the desktop environment especially. So until then, I encourage you to take care and be kind.